I do not come up here anymore.
Say something.
That's glitchy, but sensing the pulse.
Ever since Help Wanted, the Steel era of games has become a mix of several different questions, especially by FNAF Security Breach, where between the Fizzy and Faz, everyone including me have struggled to figure out the mess of mysteries that is the Pizzaplex. A whole debate sparked due to the connections the book series had to the games, and we were so sure they were canon, especially after Ruin and Help Wanted 2. But now we can confirm that this debate is dead. No, seriously, literally just as dead as Mic Trap. Secret of the Mimic not only debunked the one-to-one canonicity of Tales, but also brought in many questions and potential answers to some of the past questions we had asked. So while Steel was cooking up the sequel to Ruin, I took it upon myself to do some basic counting, more on that later, to solve what is truly going on in the Mega Pizzaplex. First things first, I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but here's the Mimic story in a nutshell.
After Fiona's death, Edwin created M1 to take care of David. Over time, M1 began to copy Fiona, which angered Edwin. Following the death of their son David, the M2 program was put into the Endo and started replicating David. As M2 increasingly copied David's behavior, Edwin's frustration grew, leading him to damage the Endo and teach it violence. M2 then began to copy both David and Edwin's aggression, transforming into a lethal killing machine. Whoopsies! Edwin also built a central computer system called the Cradle, housing the first version of the MXES security system, F10 and 4, aka Fiona, with M1 as its core program. It was set up in the basement of MCM. Over time, Fiona monitored Fazbear employees who tried to break in and steal the Mimic schematics, but they were all killed by M2, except the one, Arnold, who got the info Fiona needed.
Little do we know about the poisonous kiss Fiona inflicted onto Edwin that caused this mess to spread even further in the future, where we skip on ahead to the most recent events in the timeline, Ruin. As Cassie navigates the chaos of the ruined Pizzaplex, she descends below and disables the old M1 machine, absorbing the blue rabbit snake electric boogaloo thing. I believe this rabbit is what's left of M1, symbolizing Fiona. In the stained glass of Help Wanted 2's MCM, we see Freddy and Bonnie. While some might associate them with Henry and William, I think they actually represent Edwin and Fiona. If it were a yellow Bonnie, it could point to those two buffoons. But it seems more fitting to view them as the lovely Murray couple, especially since the same glass features sun and moon imagery, which players of sotm will recognize for its symbolism. Thus, we can conclude that blue rabbits signify Fiona within the context of the Mimic. I'm not done yet. To quote-unquote find Fiona, Edwin used the frequency 4625, and when you type this code into the MXES machine in Help Wanted 2, the entity rabbit pops out for a bit. I personally don't think this is the actual spirit of Fiona, but rather the embodiment of the part of M1 that's mimicking her, which then brings us to the mystery of Glamrock Bonnie. In Security Breach, there were multiple messages regarding the disappearance of our lovable bunny. We got even more information surrounding it in Ruin with the whole Monty catwalk ride, and even the corpse of him hidden behind the lanes. Before we get into the juicy stuff, I want to rip off the band-aid and say that I think Glamrock Bonnie was the vessel of this blue rabbit entity and only contained M1. When comparing the two, you can notice they share similar chippings on their ears. Both feature a nearly identical diagonal line pattern that gradually diverges. This electric rabbit has had its legs replaced by a snake tail, reminiscent of the helpfuls from sotm. There you have it. Further evidence that M1 is indeed the entity. Anyway, this is where things start to get a little odd. To access the room with the dead Glamrock Bonnie, you need to deactivate 27 wet floor bots. Whenever you deactivate these things, you could hear the screams and cries of dead victims. It's unclear whether it's the M1 program mimicking these voices through the Vanny network, or if they're actually possessed, but I think these victims were likely killed by M2. Whether it was an M2 animatronic, Vanny, or the Mimic itself, they met their end at the hands of M2, similar to what I believe happened to Bonnie, the M1 vessel. Interestingly, the license plate of the MXES van has the number 27 on it. Page 27 of VIP, you enter Bonnie Bowl. All of this connects number 27 to M1. The death of Glamrock Bonnie resembles the bite of 87. It doesn't really matter who was involved. What truly matters is the impact it had on the aftermath. The bite of 87 led to a ban on animatronics roaming freely during the day. Glamrock Bonnie was probably killed by an animatronic equipped with the M2 program, similar to the other victims. The wet floor bots also fell victim to M2, just like Bonnie, who is M1's vessel. This is why you need to deactivate them to locate Bonnie, due to their common quote-unquote killer. Let's take a moment to discuss Eclipse. I think that every element of technology in the pizza Pizzaplex is shaped by a mix of M1 and M2, which leads to some confusion. More on this later. The daycare attendant, sun symbolizing M1/Fiona and moon symbolizing M2, embodies the struggle between M1 and M2, and this tension persists until Cassie steps in to make them whole. This scene with Eclipse taking us back to the door sheds light, no pun intended, on the possible results once the clash between M1 and M2 is resolved. I'm not done yet. Another example of M1 and M2 fighting over control are the Wet 4 bots. My friend Kevin Catastrophe mentioned to me that whenever you shoot the Wet 4 bots, which I tested after he informed me, any of the primary Glamrock animatronics appear nearby. This could imply that the Wet 4 bots are linked not just to M1, but also M2. They just stare at you, not doing anything, until they turn on you when you mess with their technology. In this case, what's stopping them from doing this all the time is either because M1 is mostly in control, or these guys are possessed, which would be a darker turn for sure. Now, regarding the 27 thing, I attempted to do something similar to what other theorists accomplished with the 14 theory. One of the connections they made between 14 and Golden Freddy involved checking the character menu to identify who the 14th character was. There's much more to it, but I won't get into that right now. But what I did was count the 27th character in this menu, and lo and behold, it's our king, Old Man Consequences. It's confirmed in Help Wanted 2 that the king who provides you with the glitchtrap plushie to kill glitchtrap is indeed Old Man Consequences. I can't help but wonder if 27 symbolizes those who wish to stop M2 or kill it. Glamrock Freddy is a fascinating scenario as he shows a protective nature towards Gregory, yet we must acknowledge the possibility that he might also harbor M2 within him. I understand that Tales may no longer be relevant, but we remain uncertain about how much of the narrative is meant to be integrated into the games. Anyway, as you're aware, the Storyteller from Tales diverged into the mist of the Pizzaplex, creating new dynamics between the animatronics and technology, until M2, and perhaps M1, began to dominate. Chica grew increasingly gluttonous, Roxy turned cruel, and Monty became aggressive. So far, this is pretty similar to what we see in Security Breach. Freddy was an interesting case though. Page 112 of Tales Book 5 states, in other words, Glamrock Freddy was badass. Usually right now, however, Freddy was acting more like a spoiled brat than a rock star. I'm not done yet. If a version of the Storyteller existed within the game's timeline, then Freddy was influenced just like everyone else. M2 resides within him, but when we reach the moment when he spots who is likely Gregory while on stage at the beginning of Security Breach, that's when he crashes and becomes protective of Gregory. It's old news to mention that Gregory resembles David, and the image of David alongside Mimic on the hill is reminiscent of Gregory and Freddy sitting together on the hill. Therefore, if Glamrock Freddy only began to behave this way after seeing David, there must be a trace of M1 within him, right? M2 is a blend of David and Edwin's negative traits. One thought I had is that M1 not only imitates Fiona, but also embodies Edwin's positive qualities. After all, M1 was present, assisting in caring for David, while Edwin was striving to be a good single father, as you see from the tapes in Secret of the Mimic. So let me give you a brief summary. M1 combines the positive aspects of Fiona and Edwin, but primarily mimics Fiona. M2 is a mix of David Murray and Edwin's negative traits. The number 27 refers to those attempting to thwart M2. Regarding animatronics, Glamrock Bonnie served as a host for M1 until an M2 animatronic destroyed him, and now the blue electric entity resides within the Vanny network. Glamrock Freddy holds both M1 and M2, but during the events of Security Breach, M1 is in charge. The daycare attendant and the Wet 4 bots also contain both M1 and M2. A specific trigger, such as turning off the lights or using the phaser blaster, allows M2 to take over. Glamrock Chica, Roxanne, and Monty all have M2, but Roxanne is debatable when we examine this scene from Ruin, especially since she is a security node linked to MXES. Anyway, you understand the gist now. Security Breach and Ruin resolve around the conflict between M1 and M2 for dominance within the Pizzaplex, and as it stands after the events of Ruin, M1 has been defeated. We have deactivated MXES, and the Mimic is now at liberty. We were deceived. All Fazbear Entertainment can do at this point is abandon the Pizzaplex and allow the struggle to continue. Oh boy, that was a lot, and there's still a lot more I need to talk about. I might have to make a part 2 soon. Maybe this time I won't have a very huge, very questionable delay between this video and the next one, and hope that Steelwool doesn't release a Ruin 2 teaser in that period of time. Anyway, I've got some stuff to do. See you all in the comments, and remember to stay safe and stay fast-tastic.